Hello. So today, thank you for the introduction, and I'm honored to be part of this webinar today. I would like to discuss with you about the hidden dimension. Actually, in this current situation which pandemic created for us, the social distancing and its architectural influence become very important in our daily life, for today and for future. The pandemic has been started actually changing the human behavior fundamentally, especially related to social distancing. It became very important the way how we think about the public space. As Mr. Radu and Martin mentioned, that we all realize that how important is our home and our dwelling, where we live, and the way how we have been spending time there became much more important, and the way how we design spaces for our living environment will be important. But on the other hand, in big cities, and also in any other big city which is actually surrounding our globally, the world, the density will be one of the most important things which affects actually the public space. So as architects, we don't design for past, we design for future. And this pandemic is putting in front of us certain regulations related to health issues, especially we need to learn how to live hands-off. And for us, this is something really very difficult, because in our cultures, like every country or every city has different cultures, but still in the cities, we learned how to live in density. And if you put this social distance rule, which is related such as 5.5 meter distance and having hands-off public space regulations, this will create definitely, if they don't find a solution for vaccination in, let's say, next 1 year or maybe 2-3 years, we don't know, then we need to really find certain, we need to look for some solutions. At least we need to discuss about it. In that regards, if we revisit the American anthropologist Edward Hall, who defined the term proxemics in 1963. Actually, proxemics is a study of human use of space, where we can see the population density, how it affects has effects on our behavior, communication, and social interactions. We can easily say that our built environment has already many proxemic codes and patterns embedded into our spaces where we design them, where we live in them. And Mr. Edward Hall defines this proxemics in 4 zones. The closest one to ourselves, it's called intimate space, and between 45 centimeter and 120 centimeter, it's called personal space. Into your personal space, we only let actually our closest family and closest friends to interfere in that space. And the social space is actually between 120 and 350 centimeter. Imagine that instead of having these webinars online, we were supposed to be in a conference hall, and in that space actually we keep the social distance without being irritated from each other. Following these proxemic codes, actually we could live in public space together until now. But these health regulations are pushing us to really keep the personal space really shut down. So you can only interfere in a public space with people, with social space, even with your closest family, like with my mom. I cannot be during these pandemics. I fear that I get closer than 1.5 meter because there is this health regulation. It changes our daily human behavior towards especially our personal space and the way how we will behave in public space, especially in the cities, because the high density is so important, and we may need to find solutions how to reduce this high density. So we need to discover new proxemic patterns, not only to understand how people will interact with each other. Actually, these proxemic patterns will also define the organization between spaces, streets, buildings, and even the town organizations. So in one hand, we know that how important is our home, but on the other hand, as our civilization in a way require, we are social human beings, and we need to really find solutions for social sustainability, because we all have globally right now a fear. And pandemic, in that sense, will be kind of a game changer, and we will start thinking about architecture in a different way in every scale. So if we go back to Industrial Revolution, actually with the Industrial Revolution, it started to separate the our private space from the public space. So living and working has been separated through the opportunity of moving. And this has been like a physical thing, and this physicality of moving created much high density cities around us. But today, with the help of technology, instead of we are having this pandemic situation, with the help of technology, the physical moving has been replaced easily with digital moving. So currently we are together in a webinar virtual room, and we can able to talk with more than 100 people. They can listen to us, and they can. So we are globally sharing this simulation. These tools, for example, we are right now in Zoom, and this Zoom hasn't created yesterday. It was there before, but we were just not willing to use these tools. But currently, we all discovered that it's easy to implement these things in our daily life. And what makes it easier is actually, of course, the fear of pandemic, plus that we discovered that the technology can be helpful and easier to reduce this density situation. But on the other hand, in post-pandemic era, as architects, when in the post-pandemic era, if we sit around a table to design a new home, a new public space especially, we cannot just sit down with engineers and our clients and with certain consultants. As architects, I believe that we will need another way of finding solutions with behavior designers, socialists, with philosophers together. We need to involve these peoples together in our architectural thinking and finding architectural solutions for especially public spaces. And of course, this situation related to maintain the social sustainability, we must find solutions for less density and balance in the density, which will create a new urban context, most probably. I mean, these cannot be the direct solutions, but just minor thinking can propose us that we can have maybe a distributed flexible system, micro environments, micro communities. So we need to start atomizing things into small parts to be able to have this control related to social distancing and to reduce the fear of people, because we don't want to fear from each other. We want to be in a space together, but we want to also put people closer to our personal space, not only to our social space. And of course, the future requires the smart city, and the smart city will need smart design and smart construction solutions. But as we know, if this pandemic continues for a long time, there will be definitely a much higher human labors will be really increase, the cost will increase, and these all the sectors, not only architecture, they will adopt the latest technologies into their businesses much faster than we have ever thought. And this will really happen so fast, and all this digital revolution and all this, especially in architecture and construction sector, all these, let's say, robotic technologies and all the other technologies we have been borrowing from, let's say, automotives, from the airplanes and many others, will be implemented much easier into our design and manufacturing process. We will have more research centers, we will have more like this kind of environments in our offices. We have been using these tools in our office, but maybe we will start using them even more to be able to gather not only physically in our office, that our employees will travel, let's say, a lot of hours to come to office. Maybe we will really find ways to meet in other platforms. So finding solutions in for the urban context, not only some of you may already know that as Melike Architects, we have been working on the Sail Robot Science Museum project since 1 year. It was an international competition which we won. And at the end of this year, the construction will start. This museum is going to exhibit robots, but the important part of this project, it is going to use smart robotic construction methodologies during the construction. For us, this project was a kind of a case study to be able to develop these digital fabrication and offsite technologies to bring them on site in such a scale of the project, instead of we have been doing these things on the pavilion scale, but now we can do it on the in this type of building scale. But in near future, it looks like we will see this type of smart construction methodologies even much faster than in our cities. Because of these labor cost related issues, many companies will require maybe these solutions much faster. So to summarize my especially the hidden dimension idea related to public spaces, as architects, we really need to find ways to communicate with behavior designers, socialists, philosophers, to be able to really design for human behavior, to be able to gather in public spaces to reduce the density. Not only in physical ways, but also maybe in some cases virtual meetings will still continue in VR, AR, and holographic public spaces will become our daily routine. But I believe that it will be really important to find the right balance in between physical and digital. Thank you.
I take from here. Thank you, Melike. I first, before I start to the lecturer, I want to thank you to Mr. Radu Teacă for his presentation. Also, I want to thank to Melike. And right now, sorry, I'm very honored to invite Davide Maculo, who for 20 years was project architect in the atelier of Mario Bota, with responsibility for over 200 international projects worldwide. And after that, he opened his own studio. Notable works for the architect include the VIP Art Foundation Mixed Use Gallery, apartment in Gangnam, Seoul. I hope South Korea, the new Asuta Hospital in Israel, 5 stars hotel and spa facilities in Greece, the headquarters Janssen AG in the Obereit, Switzerland, private museum in South Korea, Sino Swiss Center in Tianjin, China, several houses and housing in Switzerland and abroad. I'm very honored. Please Mr. Davide Maculo, please welcome.
Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining. I want to present you one single project today. Just let me open the windows that I can use this. I want to present you just one project. And using the metaphor of nature, I like to think that architect is like a gardener that plants his trees, and he doesn't maybe see the entire splendor of the trees that he plants in the forest that it's already given. I like to think that we build, even in urban spaces, where, please request control. The architect does a gardener that plants the trees in a forest that is given, but I like to think that this forest, it doesn't exist. I like to think that when we do a building, we work on a virgin land, because we don't want to interact with maybe too many mistakes that human has done. So a territory always has its own soul. This pandemic time reminds me very clearly on this concept of nature, man seeking nature, man belonging to nature. And it reminds me to a word that we have lost during the years. Between 20 and 15 years ago, the word ethic was a word that has been extensively used by the intellectuals. And it was intensively used by intellectuals at that time because they were feeling that this word was already disappearing, but while we were selling ourselves to a more commercialized world. So it was a kind of sense of guiltiness. And since 15 years, we don't hear this word anymore. And we want this word back on the scene. We want this word to be part of our life, to have a more ethical planet. Architecture is the link between the DNA of a place and its future. It is as well the first shell out of our body that relates to our senses. In this concern, we have these two territories, these two ecologies. One ecology meant in the broad sense, which is the historical, the economical, the political, and the traditional and the geographical territory or ecology. And the second one is the inner ecology, which is the psychology of the people, which is the senses, which are the senses of the people. So we work to put in balance these two ecologies. And we work on the sentence that Bruno Munari synthesized a meaning of art and architecture in a great way, which is civilized people lives in the midst of their art. And here we start with our dream that is a project that concerns several projects in a remote valley in the Swiss Alps. Valle Calanca it's called, where we started 3 years ago by building a sculpture, a urban sculpture that is part of the heritage, cultural heritage of this place, which is as well a house with the conceptual artist Daniel Buren. This project, let me go, this project in the town of Rosa made us start the creation of a foundation for contemporary art in this village. The idea of the foundation is that we produce art and architecture joined together as pieces of urban life, as art to live every day. It's like public art, but it's not only a sculpture in the garden, but it's the entire village that becomes an artwork, so that we can influence in positive terms the life of the people that lives in the village. And this is about enriching a cultural heritage, providing a social growth through sharing work of art and politics together, to make the population participating, to build their own environment, and influencing the economical and cultural destiny of a region, and resisting against the theory that we have to produce architecture that relates human to machines. We don't. We relate humans to nature. We need nature to live within. So we want to stress the debate of the use of the rural area beside the use of the cities, because rural areas still are 98% of the land of our earth compares to the 2% of the land used by the cities. So we work on these two ecologies, the inner and the outer ecologies. In the projects of the foundation, that are a dozen of projects that we are working on right now, we have 3 churches, and the 4th will come next year, of the Anglo-Swiss artist David Tremlett, that changed the face and the fate of 3 beautiful churches of the 16th century. Then we have 10 more other artists that will design houses to live within as patrimoine, as heritage of the community, starting with the first, which will be Not Vidal. We provide an archaeological park that is the reconversion of the walls of the Renaissance period of the village. We are working on starting a new Biennale of Art in 2021. So I think that within this, the art has stressed as well the political authorities to bring up a new idea of a natural regional park to enhance the beauty of the biodiversity of this region. And within this as well, the citizens, they started to give to the foundation their properties to develop pieces of architecture joined with art to enrich the environment they live within. So it's a kind of growth that doesn't look only to the goal of putting art in a valley to spread out from a local meaning to a global idea, that we don't give it for granted that the democracy in this little valley is confined to a little valley, but it's a message that can be delivered and spread out throughout all the world. So the citizens, they participate by raising hands if they want to have a certain kind of art or not. And this talks to the citizens of the valley is one of the core of the project that we are doing, that allow people to live in the midst of their art, but the political and the social community works together with the artists, with the architect, with the urban planners to resonate and to give meaning to their region in a way that this region can enrich itself, change the economical destiny of the entire region, and bring it to a brighter future that have seen in the past a depopulation of the valley, but in the recent years, like think about 400 years of depopulation, and suddenly in the last 10 years, the population of the valley almost doubled. And we have seen so many people during this pandemic stay-at-home period in this valley, thanks as well to the technology, but a technology that allows us to enjoy nature, to enjoy the 98% of the land of the earth that is untouched, to take care of it, and 98% of pleasure that the people can find again, thanks to the technology, but not suffering from the technology. Thank you so much.
Hello. I have to make an announcement for the audience that the first part is finished, and we will go on with the second part of the event, the debate with the moderator session. Okay, thank you.
Hello back, everyone. We will start now the debate. It will be questions directed to our speakers. I want to thank all of our speakers until now for the words and thoughts about architecture in this pandemic time. I would like to address to the audience that they can submit questions that at the end we will address to all of the speakers. Just type the question, and then me and Mr. Evanescu will ask the questions at the end of the sessions. I would like to start first with a question for Ms. Melike. In your presentation, you talked about technology. Do you think that because this is the pandemic with the virus with his own nature of transmission? Maybe we'll have, because I'm sure that this will end in a couple of months. The thing is how architecture can give an answer to a future pandemic which might have another kind of transmission. Now we are talking about social distancing because the virus is transmitted in that way with the airflow. But perhaps, thank God, no, we'll have any kind of pandemic that will have something else. So if we focus on social distancing and this thing is over, and something else happens, what will become of architecture? Do you think, because for now this pandemic is the main thing is the airflow. So probably if we are talking about technology inside of buildings, inside of spaces, is the airflow. Do you think that the architecture could change in a matter that we will have machines that will provide health, and we will more or less lose the everything else that goes with the architecture? This is a pessimistic
Yes,
scenario.
exactly.
Yeah.
I want to stay on the optimistic part, actually, because the way how I see, especially specifically this pandemic related to this social distancing issue, actually it reminded us and it taught us how our living environment is important. And it also showed us the possibilities, the existing possibilities of the existing technology, which we have been not really using properly globally. So in that way, we all are learning that there is this possibility that we don't need to be stuck in the cities altogether. We can live and work in different ways through the help of the technology. This is, I think, one of the, from my point of view, like the optimistic view to really what we can learn from this pandemic. But at the same time, it puts in us the fear of social space, like, because we don't want to I don't want to go to a shopping mall at all. I don't want to even go to a plaza where there are many people together, or I cannot really imagine that I go to a high-rise building with couple of elevator and thousands of people are working there. I want to really find solutions to have the balance. That's why I say that we need to really develop the balance between physical and digital. So we discovered the existing potentialities of the technology, but at the same time, this pandemic or another future pandemic, as you say, we don't know what kind of effects they may have. We discovered that we can see positive sides of the technology to embed into our work environment. But at the same time, I think this will change in a way this big economical circle. So that's why I believe that this microeconomics and micro communities will become important. As also Mr. Davida was saying that, you know, in nature will become is important, and this pandemic reminded us like how nature is so important and how we can, you know, in a city when you live in a, let's say, people were okay living in a 20 square meter housing because for them the public space or outside was also part of their home. But now, today, you know that actually your balcony or your garden is more important than the public space. Or imagine that, in my case, I cannot really imagine when it will be the next time that I go to a concert hall and I pass by, let's say, 15 people in a row to sit in my seating in the middle. Like, you know, these things, or taking an airplane, which we all, I believe, that travel a lot because our projects maybe all around the world. But imagine that taking even an airplane or going to in an airport, like these things are becoming more problematic. But we see also the positive sides of technology. But for the people who are really physically producing, for them, actually the company owners are really realizing that human labor is becoming so expensive, then they will also find solutions, you know, to implement these robotic technologies in whatever sector they are much faster than we think into their businesses. And these things, what they implement, actually are already existing, but they were avoiding to use these technologies. So this pandemic is changing, that's why the human behavior, in my opinion, and we will all facing this situation. But yeah, so I cannot say directly that architecture has a solution for that, or the architects can have a direct solution for this, but we need to have, that's why, more interdisciplinary roundtables together, especially, let's say, in these seminars, webinars. Also, you need to also include not only architects, you need to also find, you know, other disciplines to take part in these conferences. I think we need to really develop ideas, not only the materiality of the architecture through spaces, but we really need to think about the balance between the physical and digital space. That's what I say.